You hear the screeching of an owl, you hear the wind begin to howl. You know there's zombies on the prowl, and it's terror time again. They've got you running through the night. It's terror time again, and you just might die of fright. It's a terrifying time.
There's many things that go into making a good base. Location, defensibility, availability of resources, how many possible entrances and exits there are, how many floors there are on the building, and more. So join me as we take a look at the many choices to be made for long-term survival in Zomboid. But before I begin, I'd like to give another shout out to FOXFIRE 47 for her lovely artwork. Be sure to check her out down below. She's always live streaming at least 3 to 4 times a week, and check out my other work down below as well as hers. I'd like to thank you also for supporting our content. Now let's begin. Location is one of the most important factors of making a good base. Too far out, and you'll be cut off from easily raiding local towns and cities. Too far in, however, and you'll be fighting a constant battle against the teeming hordes that surround your location. It's very much a Goldilocks in the porridge situation. You've got to balance your needs with survivability. You also need to factor in if you have a vehicle or not. If you do, then you can afford to base a little bit further away from a major population center, as you won't need to walk for a day or two just to get a can of soup or some nails. Personally, I don't recommend you base within the center of town or cities unless you can secure one of those stores that have a second floor apartment by destroying the stairs and relying on ropes to get up and down. Using that method, I have taken over and lived for several weeks above the Spiffo Burger in West Point, at least pre-Build 41. If you want to live in a town, I recommend you live on the outskirts. Places like the secluded house at the edge of Moldraw, or the last house in town out at West Point. Places that are far enough away they won't attract the entire town, but close enough that it's a short walk or a jog to the places you want to hit for loot. Now, my personal preferred strategy, however, is going out of town entirely. I like basing at places like McCoy's logging camp, the secluded farmhouse west of Moldraw, or the lake houses near West Point. These places all offer a lot of seclusion, safety, and resources that can be deal makers in different circumstances. Defensibility is determined by a variety of factors that can operate on a sliding scale pretty much. Now let's talk floors first. Second story or more buildings are always the preferred choice, especially ones that have cooking equipment and entertainment equipment on the second floor. A second story building's always easier to defend than a first story because the barricades will fail, but I've yet to see a zombie that could jump up an entire story while the staircase is gone. If you do have to use a one-story building, then apply as thick of a layer of barricades on the entrances as possible. I'm talking planks or sheets on both sides of the windows, pile up the furniture so they can't even climb in if they do manage to break down the barricades, not without destroying the furniture at least. Defensibility doesn't come from just floors though. The house on the edge of West Point, while small and a first floor building, and thus is easily broken into, can make for a strong early game holdout due to its remote nature. And the opposite is also true. A well defended second floor building that's had its staircase destroyed so that only has rope ladders or temporary routes in can serve just as effective of a base in a more populated area. Now if you intend to use the second floor method, I'd recommend you put multiple sheet ropes up all around the building, for zombies can rip them down, leaving you with no way in except to craft a new set of stairs. So give yourself multiple options to come back to. Also, be mindful as to where your sheet ropes come out. The house that's in the Moldraw Medical Clinic has one upstairs window that'll drop you into the first floor of the building instead of outside, which depending on how things are going may be a good or a bad thing. Once you've made your choice, gather whatever materials you find and get to constructing your defenses, for the horde does approach. Keep in mind that barricade materials have different levels of health as well. Wooden planks tend to be weaker than solid metal sheets and require 4 planks and the corresponding nails to fully cover one side of the window, while a metal sheet requires either 1 solid metal sheet or 4 small sheets to be welded into one sheet, as well as the propane and propane torch required to weld it to the wall. Vehicles can also make effective blockades for windows, for if a zombie can't reach the window, they can't climb in it. And so if there's spare vehicles you can hotwire and move into place, then consider doing so. The next factor of relevance in determining a base is the local resources. The isolated cabins in the woods offer fantastic defensibility via isolation, but the only resources within a reasonable distance is whatever you can farm, forage from the woods, and the timber you can cut down, with the possibility of a local well for water, depending on which cabin you choose. So keep in mind what you'll need to make a potential base point a long-term investment. Let's take another example like McCoy's. McCoy's has very little in terms of creature comforts, but it does offer a fairly large pile of hardware equipment, and it's less isolated than the cabins, but more isolated than some of the outskirts homes. This offers a better compromise in terms of distance for looting versus protection from the hordes. The farmhouse to the west of Muldraw can be quite a journey on foot from local resources, but if you have a car, you're much closer to a variety of things, and you can enjoy the isolation benefits and the defensibility benefits of a 2-story home, plenty of flat land to work with, and you even get a well for an unlimited source of fresh water. Basically, you want to find a nice compromise between what's nearby to loot versus how many things in the local region want you dead, because while basing in town is great for loot, it can also be the death of you, especially once a helicopter event or a house alarm goes off. My personal favorite base point's the West Point Lake houses, and this is where my longest runs have lived out their days. You'll be able to secure 4 secluded homes with a lake to the south and a river to the north, which provides an endless source of water if you clean it, and food in the form of fish. Not to mention there's plenty of land to farm as well, with plenty of road connections that lead either back to town or taking a backroads route to the Crossroads gas station, Spiffo Burger, and car lot, which can be a fantastic haul, especially if you need a relatively secure source of gasoline, as the ones in town can be suicidal. Another nice thing is this entire area is surrounded by woodland, so you can forage, you can trap, there's lots of different resources you can pull out of this local area. As time advances, the world of Zomboid gets harder and harder. Not only do you have differing seasons to deal with, but the hordes grow larger and larger, and also to consider if the helicopter event has occurred or not. This definitely determines the viability of a base. You can get away with a trailer park home in the first week or 2, but that's not going to hold up to the helicopter event no matter how well you barricaded it. It will be ripped apart, and you as well if you're still in it. At that time, you better be ready to bug out and head for your main base far from town, or you're not going to have a good time. Once the helicopter event is passed, the next obstacle becomes the long-term dangers. The power will go out, and with that, food preservation. If you want to preserve food long-term, you're gonna need either a generator, source of fuel and scrap to keep it repaired, or the materials for canning food, as well as plenty of canned goods. Your next danger in this regard is the changing seasons. Fall has plenty of tropical storms and intense weather, and then comes winter, and it's gonna make resources even tighter. There's less food, there's less abundance. And at this point, the zombie multiplier has really started rearing its ugly head, and increases the horde's numbers higher and higher. Be prepared to fight harder or burn out even more zombies if you want to reclaim any parts of the towns and loot inwards. These 4 factors, in my opinion, are the most important to consider when choosing a base, be it a temporary holdout, a local safe house, or your primary base of operations. And now hopefully you'll be a little bit better informed for how to choose. Happy surviving out there in the apocalypse. This has been Core, and I'd like to thank you for watching the video and supporting the content. Please consider checking FOXFIRE out down below, who did the lovely artwork for this video. Maybe catch her in a stream, and I'll see you next time.